When we think about history, we usually picture dusty books and official records. But that's just one side of the story, right? It's the one written by the powerful, the people who could read and write. But what about everyone else? Well, today, we're going to dig into a different kind of archive, one that's way more personal, the human skeleton itself.
I mean, what if they really could? Well, it turns out, in a way, they can. We're about to see how modern science is giving a voice to people who lived and died hundreds of years ago and revealing some pretty shocking truths about colonial America that you definitely didn't learn in school.
So what we're looking at here are clues from two totally different worlds. On one hand, you've got this beautiful personal bead, a quiet whisper of African heritage found in a New York burial ground. And on the other, you have European armor from Jamestown, a loud, clear symbol of colonial power. These two worlds were happening at the same time, and believe it or not, their stories are literally etched in bone.
So how in the world do you get skeletons to talk? Well, there's this incredible field called bioarchaeology. The easiest way to think about it is like CSI for history. The scientists who study these remains can literally read the clues written in bone to build a profile of a person's life. It's amazing.
Okay, so let's put on our detective hats. We're going to visit two of the most important archaeological sites in early America to piece together what really went down for the people who lived and died there. First up, Jamestown.
All right, our first stop is Jamestown, Virginia. You've heard of it, the first permanent English settlement in North America, founded way back in 1607. It's often painted as this heroic tale of grit and survival. But the bones, they tell a much darker story, a story of a brutal class divide and just unimaginable desperation.
Okay, so check this out because this is where it gets really fascinating. Inside the church, archaeologists found the graves of the colony's big shots. When they tested their bones, they found super high levels of lead. And you ask why? Because the rich guys were eating off fancy pewter plates, which were made with lead. Everyone else, they were using simple wooden bowls. So even hundreds of years after their deaths, their skeletons were screaming, "I was one of the haves."
But here's the thing, all that status, it meant nothing against what was coming. In the fall of 1609, Jamestown had a population of about 500 colonists. By the time spring rolled around, only 61 were left. This nightmare period became known as the Starving Time. So you're probably asking, how did things get so bad? Well, it was the definition of a perfect storm. First, a terrible drought killed all their crops. Then, a supply ship got wrecked in a hurricane and showed up with a bunch of new people but almost no food. And, to top it all off, the local Powhatan tribes finally had enough and cut off all trade. The fort basically became a death trap. And the situation just spiraled into something unimaginable. George Percy, who was in charge at the time, wrote this absolutely chilling account. For centuries, historians wondered if he was exaggerating for dramatic effect. Then, in 2012, they found the proof.
Archaeologists unearthed the skeleton of a 14-year-old girl they named Jane. A forensic analysis of her skull and leg showed clear, unmistakable cut marks. There was no doubt about it, she had been butchered for food. The gruesome stories, they were all true. This was a reality of what it took to survive in Jamestown. Okay, let's leave that grim scene behind and travel north for a totally different story of survival. We're going to New York City, to a piece of history that was literally buried, paved over, and then just forgotten for almost 200 years. And this is what's so wild. This piece of history was hiding in plain sight. Take a look at this old map of New York from 1755. And right there, clear as day, it's labeled the Negroes' Burial Ground. A massive, nearly 7-acre cemetery just outside the old city walls, used for almost a century.
Fast forward to 1991. Construction crews are digging the foundation for a new skyscraper in Manhattan when they hit bones. They had accidentally stumbled upon this lost cemetery. It was a massive discovery. In the end, they carefully excavated the remains of over 400 men, women, and children.
And this was huge. For the very first time, science had a chance to really understand the physical reality of slavery in the urban North. And what the bones revealed was a story of just incredible hardship and nonstop grueling labor.
I mean, just look at what their bones tell us. So many of them had severe arthritis in their spines from carrying heavy loads day in and day out. The spots where their muscles attached to the bone were overgrown, which means they were doing incredibly strenuous work, probably from the time they were kids. They were literally being worked to the bone.
And it wasn't just the back-breaking labor. The analysis showed they were suffering from widespread malnutrition. All sorts of diseases left marks on their skeletons, and painful infections were common. The result of this brutal existence? A tragically short life.
But, and this is so important, that is not where the story ends. Maybe the most powerful discovery at the African burial ground wasn't about how these people suffered, but about how they held on, how they kept their culture and their dignity alive, even in death.
So it begs the question, right? In a system that's designed to strip you of your identity, to crush your spirit, how do you remember who you are? Well, it turns out the answer was buried right there with them.
Get this. On one of the coffin lids, they found this incredible design made of iron tacks. It's a heart shape, and it's believed to be a version of the Sankofa, a powerful symbol from West Africa. It means to go back and get it, a reminder to learn from your past. This wasn't just a decoration. It was a powerful statement of identity, a direct link back to Africa.
And that was just the beginning. They found beautiful glass beads buried with men, women, and even children. Now, in many West African cultures, beads aren't just jewelry. They carry deep spiritual meaning. This was them holding on to their traditions, a tangible piece of the world they were forced to leave behind.
This right here, this is what makes it so personal. One man was buried wearing this beautiful copper and glass ring. In a system that treated people like property, that denied them everything, this man held on to this one personal item, a small piece of his own identity that he took with him to his grave.
So, when you put it all together, what does it all mean? From the brutal class system and cannibalism at Jamestown to the forced labor and incredible cultural resistance in New York, the skeletons are telling us a much richer and, a much more complicated story about where America comes from.
And that's really the bottom line here. This science is letting us rewrite history from the ground up. It's giving a voice to the people who were completely left out of the official records, the enslaved, the poor, the young girl named Jane. It shows us a past that was far more brutal than we knew, but also one that was filled with a resilience that is just breathtaking.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last big question. Both of these discoveries in Jamestown and New York, they were basically accidents. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other stories, what other truths are still out there, waiting, buried, just beneath the surface of our modern world?